Informal County Commission meeting. We have 7 people that have asked to address the commission tonight. I would ask each of the 7, when you come forward, to please give us your name and your address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. You will hear a timer go off at the end of 3 minutes. I'll try to allow you to wrap up your comments, and if you keep going, I'll just politely interrupt you and say time's up. So if you would, please try to abide by rules. And we ask also that you keep all your comments civil. So first person to speak is Mr. Stephen Curry. And we'll use this microphone right over here. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor, County Commissioners. My name is Stephen Curry. I live out in Woodlawn. Mayor Durrett wants to spend $8 million in county money to purchase land to build a proposed $98 million event center. With interest over the life of the bonds, it will cost county taxpayers over $150 million. County government should not be in the sports and entertainment business at this magnitude. That's not its purpose. Let's look at the big picture. The county currently has about $330 million in long-term debt. Recent articles reported that the capital requests for this year are over $130 million. That doesn't include spending on new schools, which according to one of the commissioners will be around $140 million over the next few years. That would put the county close to $600 million in debt. And now Mayor Durrett wants to add another $150 million to that. This will result in huge tax increases. We just can't afford all of this spending. Why are they proposing spending $8 million for the land when the city-owned property, Frosty Morn, is within blocks of the proposed purchase? I'm sure the city would give the county a deal on that property, and it would cost a lot less than $8 million. In the articles about the event center, Mayor Durrett projected about $6.8 million in revenues. How convenient. That's just about what the annual bond cost would be, around $7 million by my estimate. I'd like to see the details on this revenue stream. Governments are notorious for overestimating the revenues and benefits and underestimating costs. This event center will also incur large annual operating expenses. How much are those operating expenses? I haven't read anything about that. How did the mayor come up with the revenue number? In 2018, Bridgestone Arena Nashville had an estimated revenues of $12.8 million with a deficit of $5 million, meaning their total costs and expenses were close to $18 million. Why does the mayor think an event center in Clarksville will generate about 50% of the revenues of the Bridgestone Arena when we are less than 20% of the population of Nashville-Davidson County? And how many millions will that deficit be on this event center? Part of that revenue stream is to come from a portion of the payments in lieu of taxes that a number of new companies in the area are scheduled to begin paying in the next few years. So the mayor wants to divert money that should go to building schools and paying for current expenses to his pet project. How much will this cost taxpayers? We've already had a hike in the wheel tax a couple of years ago, and there's a talk another one will be needed. Aside from the fact that I oppose this on principle, there are so many unanswered questions with this, it is hard to know where to start. This will not be a good deal for Montgomery County taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Curry. Mr. Sean Henry.
Appreciate the stool here. I'm not going to use it though. Good afternoon, Mayor, evening. Sean Henry, Nashville Predators, live in Franklin, Tennessee. And I'm excited to be standing here today. We started talking about what today could be probably 5, 6, maybe even 7 years ago when the mayor first approached us at Bridgestone Arena with the Nashville Predators about what we were going to do next, where we were going to build the next ice rink, what did we see was possible in other parts of the state for us. And whenever we had the chance, to build ice, freeze water, as we always say, we say it somewhat jokingly, we jump at the chance. But what we really get excited about is when we have a chance to work with a visionary leader, politician that sees down the road on how to create another economic driver, that's what excites us. Bridgestone Arena, we're really proud of what we created, what we built. But it was done, by the time Mayor Bredesen to drive economic success, to drive an entertainment district, an area that really wasn't safe at night. Fast forward 20 years, and it's kind of the model of urban planning and tourism and planning. Last year, Bridgestone Arena alone, within our walls, we threw off about $18 million in sales tax. We are a driver. We don't take away from other projects, other public funding needs. We actually fund those public needs. When you look at what we did at Ford Ice Center in Antioch, Antioch was going in the wrong direction for so many years. We opened up the Ford Ice Center, I think it was 6 years ago or 5 years ago, and you look at what's happening now. You have jobs being created around it, restaurants opening, tourism happening, and we're driving about 50 tournaments a year. We're putting heads in beds out there as well. I think last year we generated about $3 million in sales tax within those walls at Ford Ice Center. We're 6 months or 4 months away from opening our second Ford Ice Center in Bellevue. This is completing a development, not just the start of it, as Bridgestone Arena and the Ford Ice Center in Antioch were. So whenever we have a chance to spread our brand, make Smashville a little bit larger, we jump at it when we're partnering with the right type of community, and this is the right community for us. Because you look at what we're going to be able to do with the county, with the city, and with Austin Peay, we're going to be able to create something really, really special. And as the gentleman before me said, Montgomery County is not as big as Davidson County, but the entertainment need, the desire, and the programming need is here, and we're going to be able to partner together to create something really special that 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now, we're going to be able to talk about and say, remember when we created that, and look what's been built around it. So we're thankful to be here. As I've told the mayor many, many times, we're willing to play any role in this project, from just picking out the color gold to telling you what temperature the water has to be to become ice, or programming the whole building and working with you on it. It doesn't matter to us what role we play in there, but we do want to be part of it to some degree because we know something special is about to happen. So thanks for having us out today, and look forward to answering any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. Mr. Alejandro Ponce de Leon, I hope I said your first name right, sir? That's correct. Okay.
How you doing? My name is Alejandro Ponce de Leon. I live at 4006 Apple Road here in Sango. It sounds really good. I really like that, the predator situation. But one of the things that we're forgetting about is the citizens that live here. Not everybody is obviously really feeling this arena because of the current situation that we have. It's a small town. It's still a small town. And when we go out there at 5 o'clock, when the kids got to go to school, we find ourselves with a lot of traffic. I live out there in Sango, and that traffic right now is terrible because I-24 is clogged up. The same thing with downtown. When you go downtown in the weekends, there's a lot of traffic. So it's very different. Now, obviously, I'm not using my notes so much, but I've found out that apparently the resolution or the study that we're hoping for in reference to shelter for chickens or farm animals is not going to be brought up today, which is to me, it's very, I don't want to say it's obviously devastating. I'm not here for too long, but I think that this goes further than myself. It's about the citizens. It's not about the big taxes or the big developments. It's not about, how, we're trying to bring in business from Nashville into Clarksville. It's about the citizen. And if you guys forget about the citizen, the little things that are important for the citizen, then what are you going to have left other than the predators coming to the ice rink or, raising your taxes on your communities, because that's what we're looking for. I don't know if anybody's seen their property tax go up this month, but it obviously it kind of like opened our eyes and said, oh, really? Have another $50, upgrade on our living situation. Anyways, I just want to, talk to you commissioners and to please implore that you guys got to look out for the citizen. It's the people that are not able to come up here and be able to speak out their mind in reference to the little things that are important for the people that are out there. It's not about, the taxes or the big developments or the hotels that we're going to build in Sango. It's about the little things that count. And one of those little things that count is agriculture, and those little things that are going to make our kids look at agriculture in a different way. And those things that have to do with our chickens, with with our small animals, with the agriculture that we have emblazoned in our seal again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Philip Welker.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Philip Welker. I'm at 401 Union Street in Nashville, Tennessee. I was born and raised in Clarksville, Tennessee, and since leaving, I found myself in some major redevelopment projects in Knoxville, Tennessee, New York City, and back in Nashville here. So I was asked to come and help evaluate this proposal, not only from the public sector, but also for the private sector and what that could do for the city, and kind of lend some experience and some comments tonight. In my professional observations, getting revitalization projects for downtown off the ground takes a partnership. It's not only the private sector, but it takes some leadership by the public sector. And there's no silver bullets in getting downtown redevelopments done. It always takes some public sector leadership and the private sector having the confidence to come in and follow the public sector's lead to kind of bring the bars and the restaurants and the nightlife activity and the hotels. Knoxville did it with their convention center, and they did it with a lot of rezoning and other downtown incentives to get their market square. They have a movie theater downtown now. They have concerts every night. Nashville did it in the 90s with Bridgestone Arena. They didn't have a tenant for Bridgestone Arena when they built it. I mean, that was a big gamble, but I think it's unequivocal like how successful Nashville and their bar and restaurant scene and their tax dollars have been because of that risk they took on that investment. I've always felt, being born and raised here and having left, that Clarksville has a lot of potential. Not only because you have a great historic core, not only because you're on a river, not only because of its proximity with Fort Campbell, but Fort Campbell brings in a lot of people with not only just local perspectives, but it brings in a lot of people from international perspectives, and I think that really makes an interesting blend. But like people want opportunity here. I think they want to come in, they want to create new ventures downtown, but they don't always have the confidence to say where that traffic's coming from. But I feel strongly that Clarksville's action, that things have been studied from time to time. And what I've seen in other cities is when those studies are really put to action, you don't always get it right, but you're never going to get it. Sometimes you can get it wrong, but you can't get it right if you don't try. So anyway, that said, I think this is a great opportunity for Clarksville, and I sure hope the community can support it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jeff Truitt.
Thank you, Mayor. Evening, County Commission. Jeff Truitt, Indian Hills Drive, Clarksville, Tennessee. As with any growing community, there comes a pivotal time when tough people are called upon to make tough decisions, a time when we must decide who and what we want to be. Chattanooga made that decision when community leaders broke ground on the aquarium before ever purchasing the property, just to silence the vocal minority. Evansville, Indiana, a town with 40,000 less residents than our city, in a county with 30,000 less residents, with a median household income of 20,000 less than our community, made that decision when they chose to reinvest in themselves with a $127 million event center that now hosts the OVC tournament, numerous minor league teams, as well as concerts and family events. The projected $20 million plus created through the impact is money we would never see without a project of this magnitude. I want you to think about the people who leave Montgomery County to deposit their revenue outside of our community. They attend shows, concerts, games, family activities that could easily be more accessible right here in our community. That money should be spent here. However, we are allowing it to go an hour away. Giving residents options to spend their entertainment dollars locally is absolutely critical to a community of our size. As most of you know, recent changes in state legislation will allow sales tax generated from within the facility to fund the related debt. Hotel motel tax, seat user fees, and dollars generated from pilots that are coming due will also be a source of that long-term funding. It is being proposed that our community gain an amazing revenue-inducing destination that the EDC can promote to potential community investors with minimum to no burden on the existing property tax rate. The location is in our downtown because it needs to be. It doesn't work without APSU as a primary tenant, and proximity to the university is absolutely vital. Locating in our historic district, the heart, the lifeblood of our community, will set us up to be both a tourist destination and an ideal place to attract the millennial generation, and the Gen Z profession that every community is competing for. Requiring people to drive through our community to get to their destination is a proven economic tool. Ask yourself this: where would CMCSS hold their graduations if Austin P decided to remodel the Dunn Center tomorrow? I go back to my opening statement. With any growing community, there comes pivotal time when tough people step forward and make tough decisions. This is the time when we must decide who and what we want to be. I am standing here in front of you asking, as leaders of this community, look at the future. Look at what this investment will mean for the next generation. Make the obvious decision for our future. Please consider the millions of dollars that are leaking from this community every year. Make Monday night the day we take our money back, and all for the betterment of all of Montgomery County. I ask you to please vote yes to purchase the property for the proposed multipurpose event center. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, County Commission.
Thank you. Mr. Barry Smitto?
Barry Smitto, 2402 Old Ashland City Road. Last time I spoke, I gave 5 examples of bullies telling their victims to commit suicide, and they did. I have more examples now, including Montgomery County. They're on our Facebook page group named Christian Action Team, and also at christianactionteam.com. We must learn how the exact same thing is happening in very separate states. We need Governor Lee to get the National Governors Association to implement a coordinated effort across all levels of government, which is exactly what they've done with other crises, including opioids. We need to continue our local efforts, including the Tennessee Against Bullying Facebook page, but it's a huge mistake if we don't ask Governor Lee to step up and be a spokesperson and advocate for change. Mothers Against Drunk Driving is very successful in using locals to form a successful national effort. The United States was born because local groups came together nationally and won the Revolutionary War. It will take 2 minutes to contact Governor Lee at bill.lee@tn.gov and ask him to be an advocate to stop the school bullying epidemic and get the National Governors Association to help ASAP. I desperately hope and pray you'll do this. Part 2 of my speech is about animal control wanting to manage Fort Campbell's animals. I've rescued over 70 kittens and 30 adult cats between 2 assisted livings. AC has repeatedly failed to respond to me and others for years. When I've had all I could safely care for at home, some stayed outside in the shelters I provided, and many died. You can see the shelters I constructed at Facebook page Friends of the Ferals in Clarksville. I requested fosters and asked them to establish a bank of fosters. They didn't respond. They ignored my email that said, due to needing cancer surgery, I need help resolving feral community ASAP. Mayor Dart told the current director to call me. He supposedly had the wrong number. When he got the correct number, he never called. I've mentioned that during speeches here, and he still hasn't called. It broke my heart to see he wrote a lengthy thank you on Facebook to the volunteers who took him on a tour of the helicopters at Fort Campbell, where he got to use the flight simulators. The assisted living directors are very unhappy that AC won't respond. Last week they said, "We love you, Barry." A vet tech where I took a cat last week said, "We love you, Barry." I'm not bragging, I'm telling you this because I've done nothing that should cause AC to ignore me for years. Due to my cancer, I can't continue. I've got the numbers down to about 10 adult cats. In the near future, when I cut back the food and then cut it out due to medical reasons, the senior citizens I love will look out their windows and see these cats and kittens I love suffer and die. In my last speech, I told you I'm very distraught about this, but no one has done anything. There are homeless kittens and cats all over Montgomery County. There are wonderful staff members and volunteers at Animal Control who save many lives, but Animal Control should not try to manage Fort Campbell's animals until they have much better control over their operation here. You have to chug air when you try to speak in 3 minutes here, but I have set this up at website mocotnnews.com. That's mocotnnews.com. You may have to put a www in front of it because it's in progress, and there will be much more to come there, including discussions about the IDB that will be occurring right here next month. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
If anyone has any questions, I've got to leave. Like if Director Caskey's here and wants to, somebody needs to help this situation. I have begged and begged and begged, but I've got to leave. I can't stay for the whole meeting.
Thank you. Ms. Stephanie Hayes?
Good evening. I'm Stephanie Hayes. I reside at 3950 German Hollow Road in Palmyra. Please bear with me. I am in the 4th year of remission from oral cancer and have difficulty with some pronunciations. I am standing before you tonight to discuss the regulations on sheltering livestock in the county. In recent years, we have witnessed a hobby farm movement. Families moving away from town and into rural communities. My husband and I are one of those families. I had never lived in a rural community before. I was born and raised Air Force. I married an airman. I even claimed the Air Force as my home. That was until I experienced country living in Palmyra, Tennessee. My husband, children, and I dreamed of moving onto Grandpa Hayes' farm. 3 years ago, that became a reality as we purchased 38 acres of that farm. We began growing veggies in our garden, making plans for a forever home, and our girls joined the 4-H poultry program. Shortly after we signed for our land, our dreams fell apart. A neighbor who is rich and politically connected purchased land across the road and began building. We weren't concerned as we thought a home was being built. In August 2017, we received a letter through Building and Codes that our occasional neighbor, whose home is in Port Royal, was building a public outdoor shotgun range. We did our best to stand up for our community, our hopes, our dreams, but we were unsuccessful. It wasn't long after we discovered zoning laws were changed to accommodate this landowner in July of 2017. Our small community never had a chance. We recently discovered through a Facebook post that the hen house we use is out of regs. It is a structure that has stood on the family farm for at least 80 years. You are going to penalize me for using something that was built before any of us were alive. Now you want to quibble about county regs for livestock, but we're willing to allow shooting stations within 50 feet of a property line. Granted, some of you were not a part of that decision, but you are here now. Why should a rich man get laws changed for his playground, but give the shaft to farms that have been in operation for decades and homesteaders like me? In closing, I would like to state that I am in opposition of the proposed downtown event center. You have heard from several residents in regards to this proposal. I have nothing more to add other than I have one way to get to the north side of town and to Fort Campbell, and at this time it's Riverside Drive. How congested is that going to be if this proposed event center is put in place where they're talking about placing it? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We will now call our meeting to order. We have a presentation from Senator Carita. And as you're approaching the microphone, I just want, Senator Carita, I want to say thank you for stepping up to the plate and putting your service before self to represent our county and some adjacent counties during a vacancy in our Senate seat. So thank you so much for doing what you've done.
Thank you, Mayor Durrett. Really, I thank all of y'all. It was a wonderful opportunity to do something positive for our community. And I worked hard to do a good job for you. I brought every piece of legislation that you had in your package was filed and worked on. I didn't pass them all, but I wanted to give you a report on what we were able to accomplish. The very first and probably the most important that I heard from y'all the most about was our desire to have broadband internet. And apparently last year, there was legislation that was passed that is going to allow the co-ops to CEMC and Meriwether Lewis to work outside of their footprint. So that has been done, but it hasn't happened yet. There's nothing moving quickly. The only thing I feel like I was able to really make happen in terms of broadband, you will find in your packet there is some contact information, because ECD and Comcast have agreed. Apparently there is some kind of grant that is available to counties, and they have agreed to meet with the Montgomery County Commission to discuss this grant. This was really a tough one, y'all. The next one that you gave me had to do with what I thought was very clever, the way you wanted to redefine detainee day and the prisoner days so that we would be able to collect more reimbursement for our county jails. These went through every single committee you can imagine. It passed every one of them until we got to finance. And finance said, you know, here we are again. I mean, honestly, y'all, this was something we worked on back when I was in the Senate the first time. And it cost the state money, and they're not going to do it. There are some workarounds. Apparently, we're going to have available the potential for electronic monitoring for nonviolent offenders. And I won't get into the weeds of it, but we would be looking at $10 a day versus $30 a day. So that is something, I spoke with Charlie Curtis this morning and with David Connor, who is the Executive Director for Tennessee County Services. And Charlie Curtis, of course, is the Executive Director for County Commissioners. And he, in your meeting in the next couple weeks, I think this is something he's going to bring up that might have some potential to help us. It's kind of the same story with the Juvenile Detention Center. Y'all had requested that the state do a feasibility study and provide some data. That was something you wanted to look at. Well, this was such a great bill. As soon as I filed it, everybody signed on. Everybody else in Tennessee wanted to do this too. They thought it was a great idea. But the state came back and said, we can't afford this, especially if everybody wants it. So if you want a feasibility study, you're going to have to pay for it locally. So we're getting kind of a theme here that if it costs a lot of money, don't look to the state. We did have some real surprises, though. You wanted to create an anti-panhandling law, and, you know, that's a hard thing to do. We have lots of constitutional issues, but we made a little progress with this. This year, a bill passed that would prohibit persons from standing or conducting activities in the median of a state highway. So that's not the whole deal, but it's something. It is a place to start. And then we had the disabled parking violations. Y'all had wanted the state to begin to collect data and make some recommendations. They're very willing to collect data and make recommendations. Just don't ask them to pay for it. So the Department of Revenue is going to collect the data, make some recommendations, and they will report to the Transportation Committee of the Senate and the House next year by February. So you should have some maybe ideas that can be helpful. One of the unique ones that we had was to allow the county mayor access to examine county bank records. I'll tell you, we got a lot of pushback on this. Surprising to me, because the first people that came to see me were the bankers. And they said, no, if your name is not on it, you don't see it. So got a lot of pushback, but we were able to solve the problem without legislation. And you will find in your packet a copy of the letter that tells us, and we think that problem is resolved, but you will see how we would go about requesting that information without having to have legislation. And then the big home run, one of the big home runs for us, it was y'all's legislation, the local sales tax distribution for internet sales at the point of delivery. This is a complicated issue, and I'm going to do my best to explain it. You know that when the world changed and we all order everything on the internet, we were not able to collect that sales tax. But because of recent court decisions, there was the Wayfair decision that passed in June. Because of that decision, we now can collect, and the big piece of this was that our Department of Revenue was not enforcing this. If people paid us good, but if they didn't, we didn't enforce it. Well, now we are enforcing it. After October 1, that will be enforced. Okay, here's the second piece of this, and this is what is really a windfall for us in county government. And it's not going to happen till October 1, so this doesn't go in the budget, y'all. And we don't have a way to know how much it's going to be, but here's what's different. If I order a table, and I live in Montgomery County, I don't live in the city. If I order a table on the internet, okay, that table comes, and that company, let's say Wayfair, they will send that 7% that the state gets, they'll send that to them. And then the 2.5%, the local option, used to all go to the city. But now we have a new formula. And because I live in the county, that money will go to the county, not the city. So we are looking at a windfall. We don't know how much, but that was the big home run. And that was y'all's bill. Because when I introduced it, nothing had been done. The cities, of course, weren't in a hurry to do anything about this. But we were able to get real serious discussion going about it. And long story, went back and forth. In fact, after I left, I had to get one of the other senators to do the concurring on the message calendar, but we got it. So I think that's, and that was y'all's, because y'all had the initiative to follow up on that. One of the other ones that y'all brought was the indecent exposure in a penal facility. You had wanted us to change it so that it wasn't just guards, that it was any staff member, and we were able to pass that. So that is now law. And one other one that I was disappointed we couldn't do, but it's doable in the future. You had a bill about burglary. I mean, we know that it is a serious problem of burglary on construction sites, but the way the bill was drawn, judiciary wouldn't pass it. My suggestion to you is that you use your really smart county attorney over here and get him to design the bill so that it's honed more tightly. What the bill, as it was written, did was it made one punishment if you stole copper on a construction site, and then a different punishment if you stole copper out of a store. So that just didn't fly. So we've got to rework it, change the language, and come back with it, because that is an important bill for us and for people all across the state. So those were the main, let's see, we did have two other ones that were not on your list. One of those was military enrollment. And one of the things we were able to do, now if you're active duty military and you have a dependent child that is at Austin P, and you get orders out of state, then your child still is considered in-state tuition. So I think that that's something that's important for us. And then the last one has to do with the event center. And this one, this was not an easy bill to pass, but I want to tell you just what this really does. These are known as a TIF, and it's something that the state used to do a lot of. Back when I was in the Senate before, they were starting to do these. And what we are able to do with this legislation as it passed, if you all decide that you want to build this, then inside the event center, any ticket that is bought, any Coca-Cola that is purchased, any t-shirt, any activity inside that building, we keep the sales tax. It's not going to Nashville. It used to go to Nashville. For the temporary time, the time limit is 30 years, cannot be refinanced. So, you know, it's a one-shot deal, but 30 years is pretty good. This was not easy to pass. Mayor Durrett and Tim Harvey made way more than one trip up to Nashville. A lot of people were involved of your delegation that really worked hard to pass this. And the thinking is that the state is not going to do this very often. We are, in their book, they look at us and they say Montgomery County is a very good risk. We think that they're the kind of community that can pick a winner. So we have that funding stream if you all make that decision. Lastly, I did include in your packet a report on 3 of the road projects that y'all had requested, and so they are in there, and I think each of you know how to get in touch with me if you should want to follow up on any of these things. I wanted to brief you, and y'all had great legislation. I am delighted that I had the opportunity to do a little work for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Carita. We'll now go to our zoning case, CZ5 2019 application of Kelly and Paula. Tim, Jeff, help me with that last name.
Replogle? I apologize if they're here.
From C5 to AG.
Sure, this is our case number CZ5 2019, the application of Kelly and Paula Replogle. This is out on 41A, just south of Sango area. It's in the planned growth area. Some of you may remember this application. Give me 1 second. Some of you may remember this area just about 7 or 8 months ago. A larger portion of this property was converted from ag to C5. Well, the farm that you can see just south of this 5-acre swath here had requested to purchase this property from the folks who zoned it to C5, and they're wanting to convert it back to agriculture. In other words, we talk about this in the last couple months about owning your buffer, and when you don't like a zoning decision that's done next to you, here's a couple that's done something about that. We believe they should be commended, at least from that aspect as a citizen, to take their destiny into their own hands. Here's a larger view of it, just south of Bagwell Road, across from Welsh Road out there. And on this map, you can see the zoning C5 there, that sort of block from that strip down there on 41A. And they've purchased those 5 acres and are requesting ag. 5.02 acres to be specific. We did not receive any department comments of concern, or no comments were registered. It is in, like I said, it's in the planned growth area. It is consistent with the land use plan. The staff recommended approval, and so did the Planning Commission. This is Highway 41A traveling north. The property is just before those billboards you see up there on the right side. This is a view of the home. So the 5 acres, we can't see it. It's just beyond The rear yard, it's all wooded at this time. And there's another site, and as I mentioned, the Planning Commission and the staff both recommend approval.
Any questions of Mr. Tyndall? Commissioner Woodruff, do you have a question?
I just wanted to echo your comments to the senator. Thank you for your service again. I know that we're not asking for a third time. If we got an opportunity to go back a third time to support us, we appreciate that. So thank you.
I'm sorry I missed you, Commissioner. Any questions of Mr. Tyndall regarding CZ 5 2019? Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Do you, I'll get you after the public hearing. I think you had a little something you wanted to say about the.
Yes, we do the public hearing first.
Is there, at this time, we'll now go into public hearing to hear public comments regarding CZ 5 2019. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on behalf of this application? Anyone to speak on behalf of CZ 5 2019? Anyone to speak in opposition to CZ 5 2019? Anyone to speak in opposition? All right, we'll now close the public hearing. I think Mr. Tyndall just wants to give y'all a real quick update on our where we are on the growth plan.
Thank you, Mayor. I know we have a lot of other business to get to tonight, but I did feel it was important to let the commission know and just get the word out of what's going on with our growth plan. Some of you were here, actually all of you were here, back in October when we talked about updating the last growth plan to amend it for the 600 acres off of Exit 8. Well, at that time, we really specifically went after the land for the athletic complex there, and we only changed the planned growth area to the urban growth boundary just enough to accomplish the city purchase of that land as well as several hundred acres around it for future growth. At that time, the mayor said, well, why don't we just look at the whole county, but we didn't want to mess up the time frame at that time. So we took our time, we waited for the new city administration to come in, and we started a new growth plan. The Growth Coordinating Committee is a joint committee chosen by the city and the county mayor. If we had multiple cities, it would be multiple cities involved in this, but we're fortunate to have one city and one county. We don't have a title yet. We've left that up to the group, and we're going to discuss a title for this going forward. I just want to tell you a little bit about the process. It's a 6-month process. Tennessee Code says from the day you start, you have 6 months to get it to the city and the county. We started April 29th with our kickoff meeting last Monday. We had a great attendance. The mayors get to choose the Growth Coordinating Committee. It's at the behest of the county mayor to start it, which he did, and then they sat down with myself in March to choose the committee. In our situation here with one city and one county, the Regional Planning Commission by default is your Growth Coordinating Committee, and that's the group that we used back in October to do that other update. Because of the magnitude of this update, we've chosen to add, with the mayor's joint consent, some other individuals to that. So besides the Planning Commission members, which are listed up top, we've also added, and this is on the voting side, a representative from Clarksville Department of Electricity, a representative from Clarksville Montgomery County School System, a representative from Clarksville Gas and Water, 2 representatives from Cumberland Electric, though combined they'll have 1 vote. One of those gentlemen, Mr. Fielder, handles the electric side, and Mr. Cook's handling the broadband side. So I know you heard from Senator Corrida about the broadband, and they're going to be looking closely at our growth plan here to make some educated choices going forward. Mr. Truitt from Economic Development, and 2 county residents, Ms. Connie Cooper and Mr. Philip Hagewood. In addition to those individuals, there were some other individuals we felt would be good to have the group be more well-rounded, but maybe didn't need to have a vote since a lot of the folks on this list as ex officio members maybe would vote as a block, if you would. So they're in the ex officio side, which means they're present non-voting. They can have a voice at the table, but they don't vote when it comes to the final growth plan. And that's 2 folks from Fort Campbell, Public Works and Plans, Training, Mobilization, and Security, dealing mostly with Sabre Field out there. They were told by the federal government they could not have a vote on our board, so we moved them to ex officio status, which was enough. We added another county commissioner, Joe Smith, and another council lady, Valerie Guzman from the city council, Frank Tate from the Industrial Development Board, and we also added Clarksville County Home Builders Association with a representative chosen by them, Association of Realtors with a representative, and 3 engineering companies that do the majority of the business in the county. I won't read through all these bullets, but basically since 1998, the state required the Growth Policy Act. You can look it up yourself. It's Tennessee Chapter 658 down there about how you go about creating a growth plan. It was further amended through Public Chapter 1101 and 707 several years later. There's a lot of requirements that go in it, but basically we're trying to look 20 years out. So some of you saw the article that came out in the Leaf Chronicle last week about 90,000 new residents. University of Tennessee has told us from 2019 to 2040, we're looking at 90,000 plus new residents coming to Montgomery County. Right now, myself and staff are trying to break down the rate of land that we've used, how many folks have moved in recently, how many permits we've applied for, how many homes have been built, and try to balance out what remaining zoning and what remaining land we have now. And we'll be coming up with new growth areas, new planned growth areas for the next 20 years to accommodate that growth. Really quickly, and a lot of this is also available on our website, cmcrpc.com. We have the opening presentation that we gave on Monday if you're interested in downloading that and looking at that. There's a lot more detail there. But yeah, like I said, we'll be identifying an urban growth boundary, which is high-density residential, commercial, and industrial growth just outside the city limits. That area can be annexed. We'll have the planned growth areas, which can be adjacent to the city or outside the urban growth boundary. Cannot be annexed, but it's an area where we have possibly water and sewer availability, and you'll have high or moderate density development, and then the rural areas a little further out. And just to close, here's our map here that currently sits as of last year, and you can see the urban growth boundaries in the darker pink red, the city limits there, and then the planned growth areas in their individual colors and numbers there out. We're going to be looking at the entire city and the entire county going out. 6-month process. We'll probably have a meeting a month going out. We invite the public out. Our next meeting is going to be May 30th at 10 a.m. at Civic Hall for 2 hours from 10 till noon. The public can come. All public questions will be handled at that meeting at the very end. So we're going to let the group try to get their work out of the way first, and then we'll invite any public comments at the end of that meeting. Here's our timeline. Like I said, all this is available on our website, and we hope to have our public hearings in September, October in the fall.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall.
Thank you.
All right, we will now move to our resolutions. Our first resolution is Resolution 1951, resolution to request unclaimed balance of accounts remitted to State Treasurer under Unclaimed Property Act. This is something we do every year. If you have any questions, Jeff Taylor can answer those questions. Any questions regarding 1951? 1952 is a resolution of the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners approving the updated Montgomery County Personnel Policy Manual. I know Mr. Swa is here. Most of those were grammatical changes. There were a few substantive changes, and those went before the Personnel Advisory Committee. Commissioner Beal.
Thank you. The manual does mention a county ethics committee. Can you tell me who serves on this committee and when do their terms expire?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
The manual mentions a county ethics committee.
I'm not sure who serves on it. Do you, Tim? You said it's a Personnel Advisory Committee? And I don't know who's on it, but I know we have some appointments for it tonight. I can get you the list of names, though.
Okay, thank you.
Including the new appointments that we'll be discussing tonight. I think Commissioner Smith, Tangi Smith sits on it, Commissioner Chandler, Commissioner Leverett, Commissioner Bryant, and then I think right now it's Kelly Jackson and maybe Cheryl Castle. But I'll get you that list.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Leverett?
It's in our updated binder that Shelley sent us. It lists all the commissioners that's on that. It should be.
Oh, it
on there.
does? Okay,
It should.
thank you.
Yeah.
So that's in your Dropbox. Thank you. All right, any other questions regarding 1952? 1953 is a resolution authorizing a continuous 5-year reevaluation cycle. Any discussion on 1953? All right. Resolution 1954 is a resolution authorizing additional funds to the Facilities Department to repair HVA system at Animal Care and Control. Any questions on that? They were gonna try to wait and put that in the budget, but, because of some temperature requirements, at Animal Control, they weren't able to wait. So it's a much-needed repair. Any questions on 1954? 1955, a resolution to enter into agreement with the U.S. government, Fort Campbell, Kentucky, to provide certain identifiable animal care services on post at Fort Campbell for compensation. Mr. Caskey.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Skip. We were approached last year to enter an intergovernmental agreement with Fort Campbell. Shortly after I got here, I know that was taken off the agenda last year. Since then, we've had a lot of time to reevaluate everything. We've met numerous times with the staff at Fort Campbell. I do have a couple of representatives from Fort Campbell here tonight in case you have any questions. But they reapproached us again, asking us to reevaluate the entire agreement. We sat down, the mayor, myself, and Kyle, and we really looked at the agreement, and we wanted it to be multifaceted for us and something that would be advantageous for Montgomery County. Okay. So some of the things we were looking at is that the request was twofold. As I said, the Fort Campbell had a necessary service that needed to be filled on the installation, and as well as trying to develop strong community ties with Fort Campbell. After numerous meetings with Montgomery County to provide the necessary services that will be fiscally beneficial to Montgomery County. So the IGSA had to be financially beneficial and responsible for Montgomery County. Any agreement could not adversely affect our efforts to reduce our current euthanasia rates. Over the last 3 months, they've steadily been, our live release rate has been hovering around 89%, which for a shelter our size and a community this size is actually pretty incredible. We want to get to that 95% rating. It's going to take some time, but when we were discussing this, one of the matters we brought up is this could not affect that. So we are going to take measures to make sure that doesn't happen. The services cannot negatively impact any of our current services that we provide the community. So the way we looked at it is animal control, the agreement on Fort Campbell would be self-sufficient. So none of the services required on there would impact how we service the community as it is now. Any agreement must provide financial support for the required personnel, equipment, vehicles, resources. This is so it's self-sufficient. So none of our current budget would impact having to pay for any of the personnel that'll be employed at Fort Campbell, any of the purchase of the vehicles, the fuel, any of those items would be self-sufficient through the Fort Campbell agreement. Also, the current space cannot be impacted by the agreement. We will have use of their facility, so there are some measures that we're going to take to make sure that our space isn't affected and actually utilize any free space we'll have at Fort Campbell. And it also must provide the use of the Fort Campbell facility. So that was one of the things we had discussed during our meetings, is that we had full use of the Fort Campbell facility, which all the utilities will be provided by the Fort Campbell. So this is kind of a breakdown of the current activity calls for Fort Campbell. For 2018, they had 585 calls for service compared to Montgomery County, we had 5,500 calls for service last year, just to kind of give you an idea of their load service on Fort Campbell. That breaks down to about 1.6 calls per day. And their total animal intake, they had 303 dogs that were impounded and 183 cats in 2018. Just to kind of give you an idea, currently Montgomery County, we take in 2,300 dogs and over 1,600 cats right now. 185 dogs and 20 cats were returned to owners on Fort Campbell. We typically return well over 600 animals to their owners in Montgomery County. And the total animals incoming were 513 per year for Fort Campbell, and they had 501 live releases. We had 3,300 live outcomes from Montgomery County last year. And this is just kind of a breakdown of their calls per service per month. Obviously, the summer months are going to be higher. That's typical for any animal control agency. So some just basic overview of what we're going to be required to supply to Fort Campbell. We have to have staff available to respond to service calls 24/7. We need to impound all domestic stray animals. The only exception is any trapped or stray cats or feral cats we do not pick up, but they can be brought to the stray animal facility at Fort Campbell. Impounded animals have to be housed at the Fort Campbell Stray Animal Facility, so none of the animals we pick up at Fort Campbell will come to our facility unless they're not reclaimed and they're going to go up for adoption. Stray domestic and feral cats may be brought to the Fort Campbell Stray Facility if they're picked up by a community member on Fort Campbell or their staff. All current Montgomery County requirements with regard to animal identification, owner notification, and stray hold periods will apply on Fort Campbell. All animals that are reclaimed have to abide by the Fort Campbell Regulation 40-7, which is basically everything that we currently require with regard to rabies vaccination, microchipping, and spay or neutering. Bite quarantine procedure measures, that's actually administered by their Fort Campbell veterinarians. All owner surrenders residing on Fort Campbell will be directed to Christian County. Currently, the current animal control facility also directs their owner surrenders to facilities outside the base. And Montgomery County personnel will be dispatched for request for service by the Fort Campbell Directorate of Emergency Services. And as stated, personnel must be available to respond to requests for service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just kind of highlighted some concerns that have came up over the last year from not only from the commission, but also from the community. So I'll try to answer as many of them as I can here. Will we have use of the Fort Campbell facility? Yes, we will have full use of it. We'll have access in and out of it 24/7. There will be no adoptions conducted at Fort Campbell unless we're doing some type of special event or something for the Fort Campbell families. Stray animals from Fort Campbell will not be brought to Montgomery County. While the animal's on stray hold, it'll have to remain at the Fort Campbell facility. After the stray hold is up and it becomes Montgomery County property, then we can bring it here if we have the space for adoption. Animals going to Fort Campbell, the only animals that we'll take to the Fort Campbell facility are those animals that are waiting to go to rescue or to be transferred to free up space in our shelter, or adopted animals that might be waiting to go for surgery. We do take a lot of animals to the triage vets on Fort Campbell. They do spay and neuter surgeries for us for free when they have time. So if we have animals going there, we'll take them to the Fort Campbell facility. The euthanasia rates increase. We have worked really hard and we continue to work hard reducing our euthanasia. We are employing a lot of things coming into the future that will really help reduce our euthanasia rates. One of the things is this next budget year we have budgeted to spay and neuter feral cats and do a return to field where if we pick up a stray cat, we can take it to the Humane Society or one of our veterinarians have it spayed or neutered, and return it to the field. Just kind of give you an idea, spaying one cat can prevent, in 10 years, can prevent over 400,000 cats. So just to kind of give you an idea, we budgeted to do 140 cats. The Fort Campbell personnel, they will be dedicated to Fort Campbell. The contract provides us the means to hire the personnel, but they will be dedicated to Fort Campbell, which means they will only respond to calls on Fort Campbell. That's what they'll be there for. The staff that'll be at the shelter, they will be there to clean and care for the animals at Fort Campbell. The IGSA termination, there was some questions if we could terminate it if it ended up not being something we wanted to continue doing. It is an agreement that can be terminated by both parties at any time with notice. It's on page 4 of the agreement. And it is renewable on 1-year increments up to 5 years. We will obtain the necessary personnel. This, as we said, this can't impact our current budget or any resources from Montgomery County. So in the agreement, they're providing funds up front to provide us the ability to purchase vehicles, equipment, and personnel. And I know there's been a lot of questions about the current shelter being full and how that'll affect our shelter. The shelter's always revolving. I mean, there's days that we'll have 5 or 6 kennels open and the next day it'll be full. And the next day we'll have 6 or 7 kennels open. So it's very unpredictable. You know, it's a valid statement to say the shelter can be full, but our staff works very hard getting our animals out to rescues, transferred to foster, and adopted. So that's really not a concern for us. How much space is available at Fort Campbell? Currently, we've been informed there's 16 dog kennels, which provide dual access, so they have access to outside and inside. So for cleaning purposes, a guillotine door can be opened up, the dog can go outside, they clean the inside, and then redo the process on the outside. There's numerous cat cages, there's a cat adoption room, there's a stray cat room, office space, and a front foyer. So this is the basic services and equipment that'll be provided through the IGSA. It's providing 2 new animal control vehicles and the related equipment and lettering, 2 full-time animal control officers, training, uniforms, and necessary equipment, 1 part-time animal control officer, the training, uniforms, and equipment, and 1 full-time animal care technician, training, uniforms, and equipment. The officers, they'll provide the field services as well as work in the shelter out at Fort Campbell. And then the full-time animal control care technician will be actually dedicated to the shelter, caring for the animals, feeding, vaccinating, and cleaning. And then that's also supplying all the necessary vaccines and supplies such as needles, rubber gloves, garbage bags, our rescue cleaner that we use to disinfect the kennels. And then we have full use of the Fort Campbell Stray Animal Facility, and all associated utility costs are paid by Fort Campbell. This is an overhead shot of the Fort Campbell facility. The Fort Campbell Veterinary Center is located right next door. And then this is just kind of a wide shot of the Fort Campbell base. The animal control facility is located on the very south portion of the base. Fort Campbell Boulevard runs up along the right side of the base going north. And this is what the stray animal facility at Fort Campbell looks like on the outside, and the stray animal kennels on the interior. This is a year 1 service cost breakdown, just so everyone can see where the funds will be dedicated to. As you can see, there's the full-time animal control officer, the part-time staff, and then there's a breakdown of what's required for when we impound animals, such as the initial medical exams, the vaccines, the wellness exams that are performed by our veterinarians, the spay and neuter costs. We have associated costs with euthanasia, emergency care. There was initially 3-day boarding in there, but after meeting with the Fort Campbell personnel, we're going to pass that cost on to the pet owners when they reclaim their pets, same as we do with Montgomery County residents. So the year one cost will be $301,744. This is just a breakdown of the second year cost, and moving from year 2 to year 5, there's a 3% COLA increase for cost of living increase for the staffing. And the total year 2 agreement income margin. So this is money that Montgomery County will receive above and beyond what the contract dictates. So this is basically income that will go back into our budget. The year 2 income is $92,201. Year 3 is $94,616. Year 4 is $99,501. And year 5 is $102,634. And after year 5, our total income for all 5 years will be a little over $388,000 that'll come back to the county.
Any questions of Mr. Caskey? Commissioner Butts?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Dave, thanks for being here. I just want to is this $36.33 an hour?
Yes, sir.
And for your kennel tech is $27.33 an hour?
Yes, sir.
Where do I apply? $36 an hour is
that's not
money.
actually what the staff will make. That's all of our costs built into that.
And I had one more question. There is no way will you guarantee that we're not going to get the overflow
From Fort Campbell?
yes, to put our strays in this community out? I mean, you understand what I'm getting at? If you say you're full at Fort Campbell, where are you going to put them dogs or cats?
Well, the thing about Fort Campbell is they have breed restrictions on Fort Campbell. So they can't have any like bully breeds, German Shepherds, Rottweilers, breeds of that type. So most of the animals that they do get in out there are highly adoptable animals. Their return to owner rate, I think at the end of the year, they only had 13 animals left over. So for us looking from the outside in, that's not a concern because their owner reclaim rate's really high because of the restrictions they have on base. When an animal comes on base, it has to be vaccinated, it has to have a microchip, which helps us when we pick up a dog, we can scan it in the field and take it directly back to the owner rather than back to the shelter.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
Commissioner Leverett?
Hi, thanks for being here. I have several questions. Unless I missed it, did you state what the agreement was, financial agreement between us and Fort Campbell? Like how much are we actually, was the total amount? Was that the 300 or what?
The 301.
With the contract, is that the total amount we're going to receive?
Yeah,
in 5 years?
it's not. I know there's been some misunderstanding. It's not an actual contract. It's just an intergovernmental agreement. And what the difference is when they ask us for an agreement, they're basically asking us to provide a service. How we choose to do that is up to us, rather than a contract would spell out this is what we have to do and how many personnel we have to supply, what we have to do. But this leaves it up to us how we decide how we want to run the agreement.
Okay, and the yearly, whatever money we are receiving for Fort Campbell, I mean, I'm not a math person, but I don't know if, to me, it just doesn't seem like it's comparable to the services we're going to provide them. Like we're losing, Montgomery County's losing money.
When you break down their calls for service, I mean, when you consider 1.6 calls a day and we're going to be staffing 3 officers, right now we're answering 5,500 calls a year just in Montgomery County with 6 officers. So, I mean, it's not even a quarter of the calls that we take every year, and we're doing it with 3 officers out on Fort Campbell. So, I mean, when you do the comparison, it's really not much of an impact, I guess, so to speak.
Okay, and my last question is, would you be able to send this to our Dropbox if you haven't done so already?
Yeah.
Okay,
I can do that.
thank you.
Commissioner Knight?
Mr. Caskey, I want to say thank you for coming up here and giving a very detailed explanation of the agreement and clarifying the form of agreement that it is. It's not a contract.
Yes.
And it's just an agreement. And wanted to verify, you said we can get out of this contract at any point in time, or agreement at any point in time, and it's mutually acceptable on both ends, yes?
Yeah, it's on page 4. It spells it out if you want to read it, but it gives a timeline of like how much notice Fort Campbell would have to give us and how much notice we have to give Fort Campbell. And that's provide us time to get, to pull our personnel out and to provide them time to find a replacement.
Okay. And as Commissioner Leverett had stated, and I've been talking with the community, you know, because I personally, I think it's a great idea. But, you know, I've had some concerns from the community in regards to the intake. So can you explain to us how taking on this agreement will affect intake?
Intake at Fort Campbell or at
Montgomery County.
It won't affect our intake because none of the animals are going to come here unless they're going up for adoption.
Okay.
So we're trying, I shouldn't say we're trying, we're keeping it separate from the service we provide the community here. We didn't want it to impact how we service our residents, and just like we don't want our service to impact the residents on Fort Campbell.
Okay. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the agreement, there should be someone on the military's end to ensure that our facilities and the facilities on Fort Campbell are abiding by military's processes, procedures, and policies, correct?
That actually might be a good question for Pat.
Yeah, because I know you mentioned the Fort Campbell Regulation 40-7. Being a service member myself, I'm pretty keen on policies, procedures, and, and such for the military.
I think the agreement itself, if I could interject, I think the agreement itself outlines what we would have to do to operate that facility. And so anything that we do in violation of that, if somebody hypothetically called and said, hey, I had a dog and animal control picked it up and they didn't give it back to me, obviously they'd lodge a complaint, and I'm sure it would get to Fort Campbell. And if we violated the terms of what we were doing, which is basically almost 100% identical to what we do in Montgomery County, then I think Fort Campbell would have the opportunity to terminate the contract.
I think there's also stipulation in the agreement that there's if there's an issue with how we're doing service, or how there's an issue with how Fort Campbell is providing the services to us, that we can have an arbitrator present to try to resolve those issues.
And my last question. So you mentioned about breeds. Fort Campbell, as you stated, have a regulation against specific breeds. How will that affect Montgomery County in that particular agreement?
As far as the breed restrictions,
Yes.
I don't think it's going to affect Montgomery County. It'll probably help with our adoptions more because, you know, a lot of the animals that we get in at the shelter here are bully breeds or bully breed mixes. With not having those breeds available on base, that gives us, I guess, another revenue source for adoptable animals or animals going to rescue, because we do have a lot of rescues that we work with. There's 3 large ones in Nashville Humane being one of them. They pull a lot of animals from us, and they're always asking. I think we send like 15 a week just to Nashville.
Thanks, sir.
Commissioner Woodruff.
Thank you, Mayor. I probably missed what you were saying in reference to the vehicles. Explain that one more time.
The agreement also supplies 2 vehicles that we will purchase.
We are supplying the vehicles,
They're supplying us the funds to purchase the vehicles, but we will supply the vehicles.
but it's not on page, whatever page this is. It's not in the first year budget requirement.
It's worked into there to
But
provide
these-
the funds for that.
But it
yes.
doesn't show that on this schematics you got in this agreement. It's not there. You got personnel, you got medical costs and wellness and all of that, but we're talking 300,000, but there's no vehicles in that. How much money we're talking about for 2 vehicles
Yeah, basically, well, for 2 vehicles would be $70,000 equipped.
that we're gonna have to,
No, they're paying for it. We're just using that money to purchase it.
I guess that's what I'm saying, is that if this is not a contract and it's agreement, then it seems like that figure should be here somewhere so that all the commission can see it on this agreement. That's just an observation of mine,
Yeah.
okay?
No, I understand what you're saying.
The second thing is that if it's not a contract, then again, in this agreement, we're talking about inspections. And inspections, there's provisions in here to deduct from NOV, notice of violations, from a contracting officer representative or contracting from the contract. So if it's not a contract in an agreement, how can they deduct if they find notice of violations? Now, I'm just going through that because if you do an inspection, there's got to be some record keeping somewhere that somebody's going to look at. If it's a number of times you clean the dog kennels out, somebody's got to look at how much water is on it, are the concrete floors, those kinds of things, and water sitting there. So if it's not a contract, then how can they deduct from the proceeds that we are entitled to? That's just not in this contract. So that's, when I looked at the inspection portion of this, that's what it was talking about. And the last thing is that on page 4, it also talks about if services are performed outside the installation, CR shall be granted access to those areas where services are performed. You don't have it in front of you, but that's another section in that agreement on page 3 that I'm not sure where they're going with that. Is that some other location, or is that something that should be in this agreement, or should it be in there or out? I guess is what I'm saying.
I think that's in there in case we end up, let's say we have a satellite facility in Montgomery County where we're not gonna use Fort Campbell Stray Animal Facility. We're gonna use our own at another satellite facility. That gives them the ability to come and inspect that facility. But we're not doing that, so.
I think those are some areas that I think I recommend we go back and look at a little bit closer, because if it's an agreement, why are they going to deduct something if they find violations?
I can get.
Okay.
Pat, can you talk?
Because if we talk about $100, if we talk about $500 or $1,000, depending on what it is. So you see what I'm getting at?
Right.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, good evening. I'm Pat Appleman. I'm the Director of Public Works at Fort Campbell, and I live in Sango. This is an agreement, yes, but the agreement wouldn't be that we were going to pay you no matter what. Perhaps, if you didn't perform, say you didn't hire people, then we would deduct money if you didn't do it. We fully expect that you will. There hasn't been a case, so the Army has done over 300 of these intergovernmental service agreements all across the nation, and not one of them has been canceled by either party, the government or the contracting, and not one of them has had to deduct money. So, just as a matter of agreement, let's say we tell you we want you to have 3 people there, and you only have 1 person there. Well, we're going to want to only pay you for that 1 person, not for the 3 people. That's kind of the way it's written.
I got you, but it still doesn't get to my question, is that we're doing an inspection. That's what we're talking about in this agreement. There's a section that it talks about inspection. I was a contract inspector, so I'm asking the question for those reasons. So when I find a violation, either you can fix it, if there's a disagreement, and I read that part too about a disagreement, okay, working it out. But if there's a violation, those are violation, as an inspector, one of the people, your people, how can you deduct if this is just an agreement? See, somewhere some fund is going to be transferred. So
we're going to have a quality. We have a quality assurance person now, and a quality assurance person will still go and check. And like you say, they'll be like a liaison, make sure everything's going the way we agreed it would be going. And if they find it's not, then we'll get together and we'll talk about it and figure out. If there is a disagreement or if something wasn't done, if we need to get money back, or it also works the other way. You guys could end up saying you did more than what we had agreed to, and we give you more money.
I got you, but I'm still not comfortable with that. The language, the way it reads. I'm just not comfortable with that. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pritchard?
Yes. If I'm understanding all of this, the Army's outsourcing its animal control to us here in Montgomery County, using our abilities and knowledge, and paying us for it and allowing us to work their facility under their aegis and be reimbursed for it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And for that, over the span of 5 years, we will come out to the good 388,000?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Tangi Smith?
I have three quick questions. The first one is the vet center. You're just doing animal control. You're not doing anything with the vet center, right?
No, not unless we were to utilize their staff for spays and neuters.
Okay, speaking of the staff, because I know that soldiers man the vet center. Would you use the soldiers or would you just still use civilian staff? You kind of have to use both because they're both working there, right?
You mean the VetCon Center?
Yeah.
We wouldn't really use that. The vets we use are the mobile vets that go out for on missions. They do our spays and neuters as kind of like it's a training for them, so they provide us that service for free.
As far as the employees that you're hiring, just like Commissioner Butt said, I'm assuming that the reason why the pay is significantly different from Montgomery County and Fort Campbell, because maybe they're using the contracting system or the GS system, which is totally different. I get that. But who's paying that? Are they paying their staff, or are we responsible to pay that $36 an hour?
So no, they won't. The staff won't be paid $36 an hour. The officers and the kennel staff will make what our officers and kennel staff made. They'll be employees of Montgomery County. The funds that are built into that are for obviously insurance and other costs that are associated with running the facility.
So Fort Campbell is kind of lightening their budget because we're going to take over their staff. So
Right.
that's what
providing
they
us
get
the
out of
funds.
it.
We're paying our staff for the funds that they provide us.
And I just want to make sure I'm clear because I want to know about this contract because we don't want to get stuck with a bi-county contract where we can't, right? We don't want to get stuck with that. So at any time, we can get out of this contract if we decide that this is not working for us.
Yeah, if you read on page 4, it outlines what's required as far as giving them notice, and as well as Fort Campbell giving us notice.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Beal?
Thank you. Two very quick questions. First question, who makes the final determination if the county decides to terminate the agreement?
I think that would probably be up to a combination between us and the mayor's office to determine, me reporting to the mayor's office saying this isn't working for whatever reason, or Fort Campbell communicating to us saying it's not working. But ultimately, I would have to come to the mayor's office to say, it's not working. We need to figure out a different route.
So would we be involved in that process at all?
Tim, I would think so.
Yeah,
Because
it's a
you're approving
contract.
the resolution.
It's an agreement, I'm sorry. It's an interlocal agreement, and which is binding just like a contract. And this commission must approve all contracts. So you'd have, in the budget process or something like that, this department head say, this contract's not working out, we think we should give them notice of termination, and it would work its way through the process. But it would probably start with the budget committee and his recommendation to the budget committee.
Okay, thank you. And my second question, a lot of folks would say that Montgomery County only needs to worry about Montgomery County. So what would you say to them?
I've heard a lot of that. I've had a lot of people approach me about it. The way, me being a new resident here, coming here last March, I consider, myself a big part of this community now. It's been welcoming, all the support we've had, not only in animal control, but in the community. But the way I see it is Fort Campbell is a part of this community. They do contribute a lot to the community, not only financially, but in support. So I think it's in support of the families and the soldiers on Fort Campbell as well.
Commissioner Knight?
So we all have a habit of saying no to just about everything that passes through here, right? And I can say that, with, full confidence because I've said no to a lot of things, right? But that being said, it's always good to have funds coming into the county to go back towards animal care and control to put it to whatever use you guys need it for. So that being said, correct me if I'm wrong, based off of that particular slide and based off of the agreement that I read, line by line, how much are we getting back? What's the benefit to the county after the first year or what have you?
So after the year one, I don't know if I can go back to the slide now, but
It's over 300,000.
yeah, after
If
year
you go the
five,
full 5 years.
Yeah.
It
After
also
year-
provides additional kennel space. If we have a dog that's up for adoption and our kennels are full, we're not gonna euthanize that dog. So if we have an intake, we've gotta do something with the dog. We could take that dog and put it in a kennel out at Fort Campbell, waiting for the adoption whoever to come in and open a space up for a dog that comes in.
So about 90,000 per year
per year.
after the first year, correct?
Correct.
So the county will be receiving, not giving,
Right.
right? Receiving $90,000 every year. To me, that's a win, right? Regardless of whether it's a lot or a little or what have you, any money coming in, to me personally, that seems like a good thing for the county. So, thank you.
And excuse me for interrupting, and it's saving the federal government money. Saving all of us
Saving
money.
tax dollars too.
Exactly. Any other questions of Mr. Caskey? Dave, thanks.
Thank you.
No, come on, my computer won't go back. All right, Resolution 1956, a resolution to amend the budget of Montgomery County government for the purchase of land not to be used towards the development of a multipurpose event center in an amount not to exceed $1,165,000. Excuse me, $1,165,000. Any questions? Commissioner Beal.
I'm sorry. I just have a question for clarification. So this particular resolution is asking us to basically transfer this amount of money from the general fund specifically to purchase this one piece of property? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Resolution 1957, a resolution to purchase land for the development of a multipurpose event center. Any questions? All right, Resolution 1958, resolution for the IDB authorizing a pilot for Montgomery Commons Apartments. Mr. Tate, do you want to briefly go over this, please, sir? Can somebody turn this mic on?
There we go. Good evening, Mayor and Commission. Several weeks ago, we had a project that come before the Industrial Development Board, a workforce housing project. This project was represented by a developer, Greenway Residential Development. They have identified a site for this particular project at 745 Lafayette Road. It is on a 6.03 acre parcel across from the Northwest High School. The scope of this project is to develop a 96-unit workforce housing complex. The project would consist of 66 two-room units and 33 room units. The units will be affordable to households with incomes ranging from 50 to 70% of the area median income. Montgomery County's AMI for 2018, which this is based on, is and was $55,400 a year. The estimated construction cost of this project is $15,150,000, and the anticipated construction period for this project would be 14 months, and they are pursuing a construction start date as early as June of this year. Through conversations with the county and city and with your support, we would like to offer this project a very similar pilot that was previously offered to Project Bunch that was conducted in November of last year that some of you all may recall. The terms would be a 10-year pilot at $39,000 a year. I think it's important to know currently the annual taxes for this parcel are $3,171. The full term would bring $390,000 to the community after it is apportioned We have figured these numbers out between the city and county, as this is in the city and county districts. The IDB and the city council are both in support of this housing project, and we are requesting your support as well. Any questions?
Any questions of Mr. Tate? Commissioner Bryant?
Can you give me a general idea of the location of 745 Lafayette Road?
So it's directly catty-corner from Northwest High School. So I'm gonna go back to my initial slide. I know this is kind of blurry for you all. You can see in the top slide, it points out the subject property and just catty-corner from Northwest High School there. There is one dwelling currently on the site. I believe this is to be demoed in the next few months.
Any other questions of Mr. Tate? Are you through with your presentation?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, you're
No, you're
jumping
good.
slides around. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tate.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Under reports, airport liaison, Commissioner Rasnick, you have a brief report for us?
Yes, I do, Mayor. There's not really much to report. Runway project just has little bitty things they have to finish up on. They have a grand opening ribbon cutting for the new runway May 9th at 3:30. Everyone is invited. And that's
All
pretty
right.
much it.
Thank you, sir. Good report. Under county mayor nominations, there's actually some appointments to the Personnel Advisory Committee. This will require commission approval. Commissioner Chris Rasnick appointed to replace Commissioner Charlie Keene for a 2-year term to expire May 2021. Commissioner Loretta Bryant reappointed to serve a 1-year term to expire May of 2020. Kelly Jackson appointed to replace Cheryl Castle for a 2-year term to expire May 2021. Kimberly Wiggins appointed to replace Aaron Hester for a 2-year term to expire May 2021. And Andrew Kester appointed to replace Kenneth Gentry for a 2-year term to expire May 2021. Any questions on the county mayor appointments? You'll see your reports filed. No old business, any new business. Under announcements, 2 quick announcements. Commissioner Harper, if you would, please keep him in your thoughts and prayers. I think most of you probably received an email, so continue to keep Commissioner Harper in your thoughts and your prayers. And then on Wednesday, May the 8th, which is this coming Wednesday at 6:00 p.m. at Veterans Plaza Exhibit Hall, we'll be doing a presentation regarding the Multipurpose Event Center. We'll probably do a very 15-minute short presentation and then open it up for questions from the public. So encourage all of you to attend. With no further business, we'll adjourn. Thank y'all.